Right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Career Lab Wednesday. I'm your host, George Miller, here almost every Wednesday to talk about emotional intelligence and how that applies to your career. Now, how does emotional intelligence apply to your career? That's the overall context. But I want to invite anyone at any point in time to jump on directly here in Zoom, or if you can't do that, I invite you to type your questions into the comment section. And I will do my best to answer your questions that way. If I get off track, remind me or guide me through the comment section of what you're wanting. So I'm going to share today about some emotional intelligence things and how that relates to leadership, how that relates to you doing everything you can to have the most satisfying career. But as I'm talking about this, if you have any questions that come up, anything that sparks your interest, anything that's on your heart, please chime in. Please jump in and share. You don't have to try to stay on topic. I lead several different emotional intelligence groups. I call it emotional exposure, where we do all kinds of things to make ourselves uncomfortable in relationship with each other so that we get those skills, so that we get the practice of being with other people in new ways, in trying out new behaviors to feel what that's like and to see the different results that we get when we're doing it. So I'm quite familiar with random questions and things coming in sideways to that people are curious about. So I actually really enjoy it. And I'll always tie it back to emotional intelligence, probably. So I want to share now about what we're looking at today in leadership development. Because to really be who I can become and to move in my career to advance myself, I need to refine my relationship with my feelings. I want to deepen my intuition. So, how do leaders know the difference between their fear of something and their intuition? So, we want to break this down. We want to refine our relationship with fear and anxiety. So, to start off, I want to say the most important thing to hold in this is that fear is not the enemy. Fear is incredibly important. It's been important for our development, for our survival. It alerts us to danger, all that kind of thing. So we always want to be in touch with our fear. From a neuroscience perspective, fear activates our amygdala to protect us. But when we stay present with that fear instead of avoiding the fear, our prefrontal cortex regains control. And that's when our intuition can emerge. So I actually want to practice ways of being present with fear, and that will expand the ability of me to respond to whatever the fear stimulus is. So much of my life and everybody I work with has so much of our lives are around avoiding fear. I'll share a personal example that just came up recently. So I'm expanding my business, getting into different networking groups, trying things out. And I remember where I was hesitating on something a few months ago, and I was like, God, do I do this? And then I'm familiar with this practice of leaning into the fear. So I said, okay, just do it. Just get started. Just start making the connections. You know, I invested some in, and as I was getting going, I realized, oh no, this is not, I just don't have enough time. And this isn't going to work for my long-term plan. And so then I faced fears of talking to people and saying, hey, this is what I'm seeing emerge. So, could I have done more research up front? Probably, it's for me personally, doing some more research is often not a bad idea. However, for a lot of people, research turns into this thing where you just keep researching and it can turn into an avoidance of making a decision. And so that's just one example I wanted to share personally of how um, choosing to take action from the fear and say, okay, I want something, I want to move towards it. That ends up giving me more value than if I'm staying frozen and avoiding different uncomfortable scenarios. So another thing that I want to drive home about, I just talked about some neuroscience stuff about expanding my ability to be with fear. Another way I like to look at this is through existentialism. So one of my guys, Rollo May, he found that he was a better public speaker when he allowed himself to feel afraid. And so when feeling afraid, oh, I'm just getting, oh, great. Repair people are here. So I'm going to roll with this. I'm going to keep this thing live and I'm just going to do this. Hey, come on in. Come on in. Hello? Hey, I'm actually in a live stream right now. Mushroom. 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 I'm really glad it was not your fault. Here's the unit. Yeah, I gotta jump back on this. All right. Well, sorry about that. I just chose to lean into the anxiety and work on something quickly. So I am back and moving into the next point. Ooh. So Rollo May is existential philosopher, kind of bridging existential philosophy and moving into the human potential movement. And he found that he wanted to suppress his fear. He was doing lots of public speaking events and found that he was constantly anxious about it, even though he was familiar with public speaking. He talked in front of thousands of students. So he addressed him. He was like, okay, I'm going to meditate. I'm going to really chill myself out. I'm going to know all my content and I'm not going to feel afraid anymore. And as he was doing that, he started getting feedback that he wasn't doing quite as well. He wasn't making the connection that people had experienced from him earlier. And so he realized, oh my goodness, I'm trying to turn down my fear. I'm meditating or praying to try to get away from this anxiety. But actually, what I want to do is I want to use it. I want to use that anxiety to connect on a deeper level with my audience. And so that's such a wonderful context that I want you to get around using your feelings, is that you can actually develop your ability to be present with anxiety and increase your ability to connect with the people around you. So especially if you're a public speaker, you want to do that kind of thing. You want to use the anxiety, paying attention to people that you're talking with and seeing where their concerns are. And if you're not willing to pay the price of yourself being afraid, you will not pick up on other people in that way. If you're trying to turn down your own anxiety, you're not going to be aware of other people's anxiety. And you're going to say things like, I don't know what's wrong with them. The instruction manual is 100% clear. And perhaps that's not how that person processes information. And talking it through is going to be more effective, or who knows what. But if I'm staying in that fixed mindset, and I don't want to be uncomfortable, then I will unconsciously push others away. So that's the second point I wanted to make about how fear is not the enemy. So now next, when intuition grows, when I stop avoiding discomfort. So fear and intuition may kind of feel the same in the body. You know, both are things to help me keep safe. And an example of this is the work of Sam Belloc, who wrote the book Choke. And she showed that under pressure, performers suffer when they try to over control. So they're feeling that anxiousness and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm up against this performer that I've looked up to my entire life. And so then they're like, okay, make sure to do all the right things. Okay, run through, and that takes them out of the moment. So again, they're trying to control their fear instead of using the anxiety to do what they know how to do. Now, at that level, I mean, these are, world star athletes, and they have tons and tons of practice. So obviously you're going to practice. If you're going into something and you're feeling afraid about the interview or the meeting with your team or whatever, it's good to pay attention to that fear and use it to prepare. But when you're preparing so that you can be open and available and flex and flow with whatever happens in that meeting, whatever happens in that interview. Like in interviews, you're never going to know exactly what questions they're going to ask you, but you can anticipate and practice and get more familiar with that. So that's another point, is that your intuition grows when you stop avoiding discomfort. You want to actually use and consciously choose to be with discomfort and new ways to expand. It's just like working out. You go to the gym to develop new muscles. So there's all kinds of ways that you can develop your I guess they're not new muscles. Now I say it out loud, kind of laugh about it, but muscles that have not been accessed in a while. And to grow those muscles, you go do new things and you face that. And it's usually painful. As adults, growth and development is almost always painful because we have to break old patterns. And so at the very least, it's usually uncomfortable. So before I move into my third and final point, I just want to invite anybody who's viewing in I welcome you to enter any questions into the comment section, or if you really want to embrace your fear, jump on in here. This is being live streamed, so if you want to remain anonymous, um, you know, stay off camera. But any questions that you have, it could be anything career related. I just spoke with somebody yesterday who is has been 20 years, hasn't needed to use a resume, and looking at some new opportunities, and was like, oh shoot, I got to do this resume thing. And so if you've got questions about your resume, if you've got questions about interviewing, and the biggest one I find is networking, is you initiating what you want and making those connections happen. Some kind of entrepreneurs or salespeople are that they're already good at that, and don't kind of need to do more of it, but need help refining how they're communicating, refining their connections. So just wanted to share that with you, and a couple things that you can do to stay engaged. If you want, set up a time to talk with me one-to-one. If you're more of an introvert and wanting to connect and get some guidance or some clarity for yourself, I'm happy to do a 15 to 20-minute meeting with you. And often people say that's been very helpful just in helping them clarify a next step. And if we look at it and it's a bigger project, if you've got a larger thing in your career that you're wanting support on, we can look at what a coaching opportunity might be as well. So set up a time with me. And additionally, there are videos that I'm putting out on YouTube about emotional intelligence. And this kind of thing can just be helpful for you to review at any time. So you're welcome to check out my channel. And I've got all kinds of things on there, and the algorithms, well, I'm certainly not playing well with the algorithms. So, you'll find some random ice water things on there, as well as emotional intelligence tools. So check that out as well. Okay. Well, I'm moving into, I'll start wrapping up here unless I get some questions from people. The final point that I wanted to make today is building the muscle by choosing differently. And okay, I'll get to that in a moment. I told you I like questions coming in, and I will adjust quickly. So what have you found helps teams feel safe enough to surface those deeper emotional dynamics? Dang, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. Give me more context if you want, but I will start rolling with your question right here. So what helps teams feel safe enough to surface those deeper emotional dynamics? One of the first things is going to be the leadership. So if this is your team, you're going to want to demonstrate that. It's that you walk the talk. I think about General Patton. He would make a point of walking up to the front line where there was snipers and things, and the army would be like, no, don't do that. But he knew that it was important for the entire army that he is helping with a certain battle, that if they see him taking that risk, they will understand in their core, oh, he faces his fear, I'm going to face my fear in the same way. So that's one of the first things, is if you want your team to surface deeper emotional dynamics, you're going to want to be vulnerable yourself. Leading with your vulnerability will be huge. And it doesn't have to be, I think sometimes too, I'm going to take a swing at this. I don't know the specifics of your situation, but sometimes leaders who know this want their team to move too fast and will share things vulnerably and see like, hey, I'm walking the talk here. I'm doing this. Why isn't my team doing it? And you're going to want to, if you're already operating that kind of way, you're going to want to do it in new ways. And you're going to want to talk about it. You might take on an assignment or an exercise of saying something like, well, here's what I'm afraid to say right now. And you do it on a scale of 1 to 10. If 10 is like you're pissing your pants saying it, or if 1 is, it's hardly even a risk. Experiment with risks in the zone of 3, 4, 5s. Sometimes you can picture what you'd really want to say to your team. And and it might be something where you might have some negative consequences from that. Or you can picture that, but then scale it back and say, I'm going to test the waters. And I might even tell my team that I'm doing this. I might say, it's important for us to open the lines of communication more. We need to be saying, being more authentic and saying what's really happening. And we need to be doing that faster. So I'm going to be demoing that. And I want everybody to know that it's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to say something that might not be quite accurate. We can always readjust. And then for you to model it, for you to say something that demonstrates what you're just talking about. And again, I don't recommend that you say the really terrifying thing, even though it might pop up in your mind first. I recommend scaling it back and testing the waters. Because there's the other thing about paying attention to your fear is that you want to. Like, there are good reasons. You know what? A client of mine was sharing how they were afraid that their team was trash talking them and was kind of building a case against them. And so, there's probably truth to it. Like, the team probably was doing that. And what they did was she then just went in and addressed it, and said, hey, this is going on and I'm not going to stand for it. This isn't okay. I've put in my heart and soul in all kinds of ways, and I can't believe I'm being backstabbed this way. And by doing that, she created what she was afraid of. So she took that big risk and said, no, I'm going to make a stand right here. And the reaction of the team then was, oh, see, what we're talking about is true. And yeah, this isn't, we can't manage this. And so it actually was kind of detrimental. Whereas if she had scaled it back and simply started talking about these dynamics more and taking some more meaningful risks herself, sharing things like, I'm concerned that I'm not coming across in a way that my team is really able to integrate. Oh, what's some of the feedback that I'm getting? And looking at how she could adjust, and that would be uncomfortable within herself. But instead, she just wanted to end it. She didn't want to be with the discomfort of the environment and learning new skills. So she essentially acted in a way that confirmed her her unconscious beliefs that she doesn't matter, that she doesn't belong, that if she's being authentic, that she'll get kicked out, like that kind of thing. And so this is what I mean, is that you want to refine your relationship with your anxiety, with your fear, and practice. Oh, and this is the third point, I'll moving into it, is practice it in the mundane. So just like a tennis player who's going to the World Cup or whatever it is, I don't know tennis that well. They have so much practice with all the fine movements and just what it means to flick the wrist at the right moment and that kind of thing. So you want to practice making these interpersonal risky moves moment to moment throughout your day. And you might start with something as small as making decisions that you wouldn't normally make. So even my example, while I'm getting on here and this is live streaming, and then I'm hearing the door buzz, and then I see a message that I need to go, and I could have put that off, but in that moment I decided, well, let me see what happens, and I was like, I'm just going to make a decision and play with it. So you might even do this if you and your partner, your wife or husband or friend or whoever, if you're setting up plans for the weekend, just decide stuff. Just start by saying, if you're somebody who kind of holds back and waits for others, do something a little different by saying, oh, here's what I want to do. I want to go to this restaurant. And even if you're like, well, I don't know if I really want this. Is that the one that I really want? Just pick something. The important thing is that you're making a decision, that you're being with the discomfort of being a creator. We're all creative beings. And part of that means that when we decide, we kill off one possibility and we bring to life another. And so, if I pick one restaurant over another, then I'm going to mourn the loss of the one I didn't go to. And I just want to get better and better at allowing myself to feel the discomfort in things. So these micro movements are really the game. As you make these moment to moment changes in how you engage, you're developing that relationship with your anxiety. You start to see your fear as a friend that opens the door to more aliveness, connectivity, and effectiveness with other people. Your willingness to be with your discomfort will invite people towards you. Okay, let me see what I've got a response here. That resonates, I guess. So this is in response to, what have you found that helps teams feel safe enough to surface those deeper emotional dynamics? Oh man, I could answer that in another way too. And my response is to lead, is to demonstrate the type of engagement that you want. So you demonstrate the kinds of risks that you want your team to take. And you might not go for it full force, 100 miles an hour out of the gate. You might want to practice going 25 miles an hour and then telling your team what you're doing, saying, hey, I'm taking some risks here because I want, if I expect this from you, then I'm going to show that I expect it from myself. And I want you all to know that this kind of thing is okay. It's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to say the wrong thing. And then you might have to, depending on what work you're in, if you've got a high stakes meeting, then you might say, yeah, in this meeting, don't make that kind of a mistake. Get those mistakes out earlier on in our team meetings so that we can get really unified. So let's make the mistakes early instead of in that kind of environment. But in so many meetings, the mistake that is made is that people just don't talk enough, and that there's a lot of unsaid things. So let me see what you said here. I guess part of my hesitation with vulnerability as a leader is the fear of appearing less competent or losing authority. How do you balance showing vulnerability with still leading with confidence? Okay, great. Thank you for that question. That's such a good question. I'm going to take a sip of coffee. So, notice your belief. So first of all, let's scale this back. Notice whatever the limiting belief is in how you posed that question. So I think you made it into an either or. Vulnerability as a leader is the fear of appearing less competent or losing your authority. So I think the assumption there is that to have authority means that you are competent. Let's look at that. So if you're the author of your life and perhaps whatever your expertise is, there are going to be other things that you are not competent in. In fact, that's why you have a team. So you're not going to know everything, especially in this day and age. And so that doesn't mean that you don't have authority, though. It means that you have a different relationship with your authority. So I think of, for whatever reason, the movie Braveheart is popping up. I'm millennial, right on the cusp of Gen Xer. Sorry for the millennials and Zoomers who don't know the movie. What I like about it is how emotional William Wallace is, and how flawed and how vulnerable. And he doesn't lie. He doesn't try to puff up his chest in a display of, I think, sort of shallow masculinity. He says, yeah, we're outnumbered. I'm terrified. I don't know how we're going to do this, but I do know that we can do it, that we can defeat these odds. And even if we don't, we're still doing the right thing. Even if we lose in this is the right move to make. And that is vulnerable. And I don't know about the word confidence. I think sometimes I like to use the word courageous. Confidence is like, I go swimming every morning in the lake. I'm confident I can do it. If the waves are really big, I don't swim out as far because I'm not as confident about that. It's like, I know what I can do. So it brings me confidence. As I practice stuff, I become more confident. Then the things that were scary to me are not as scary. Now it's the new adventures that I'm leading into, and I'm not confident about. And I shouldn't be confident about it because I haven't done it yet. So that's where it takes courage. And courage, as far as I know, like, it's never felt good to me. Like I feel good after, but while I'm being courageous, I'm usually really uncomfortable. I'm usually doubting myself. If I stay with that and over process mentally, then I'm going to choke, refer back to C.M. Bellick, and be out of the moment. I'm not going to be effective. So having authority, for my guess where you're at with your team, it's your job to make sure the objectives are achieved. And so you establish that and you empower your team with ways of, here's how I need you. Oh, this is a great example. So I was hiring AV techs, and I had created systems and was using equipment that, quite honestly, I didn't know how to use. Certainly not to the capacity that it could be used. So when I hired these AV techs, I said, look, there's complex systems in this organization, and I have put together a bunch of processes that I know are not as good as they could be. And I'm aware that as you get enculturated, you're going to start figuring out workarounds how to make this stuff work. And that's not what I want you to do. I want you to look at things and say, that's stupid. I want you to tell me, your boss, how what I'm doing doesn't make sense. And I want you to very quickly tell me how I've made mistakes and what's going to work better. And I want you to implement it. So I actually expect at the end of the day, I want at least 5 things that you're enhancing. So right there, there's an objective. We have events. There's these things we need to do. We need to do them well, need to do them better than we're doing them now. And I'm empowering them by telling them where I actually don't have authority. You know, they're fresh out of school. They knew better than I did. They understood technologies. It's like, you know, my iPhone. I'm around my teenagers in my life. I'll hand it to them to figure stuff out. They are the authority on it. I want them to be. I don't necessarily want to learn everything in there. So does that help? Let me know if that's answering. So I think that what's going on for you. So again, the question is, that resonates. I guess part of my hesitation with vulnerability as a leader is the fear of appearing less competent or losing authority. So I think the mistake there is that being less competent doesn't mean that you lose the authority for what matters to you. Hopefully there are people on your team who are more competent than you on things that you need their help with. If your team is only, if your team are only people who you are more competent than in all the many areas of things that we can do, you've got a problem. You got a bigger problem. You're going to have to do some serious work. So that might be helpful to look at it. You want to empower your team in the ways that they are more competent than you. And so you might say that, you know, to say, look, you know, here's our agenda. Here's what I'm really good at. I've negotiated sales of this kind. And when we get the conversation there, I'm going to make sure I'm there and you are all going to learn from me. But in terms of getting this conversation set up, there's so many things I don't know how to do at this point. And I need you all. I need you to be creative. I need you to be better than me in these areas here. Let me know if that's helpful. If I'm on track with you, if I'm on track with the context of where that question's coming from. How do you balance showing vulnerability with still leading with confidence? There's times where if you shouldn't be confident, if you really don't know, then pretending to be confident is counterproductive. If you are going into a project with your team and you're pretending that you're confident when you're not actually, that is going to have problems. You're going to have it doesn't mean that sink into a hole and hide under a rock in it. That you're just honest about where it's at. Okay, I've shared this example before. Maybe this will help kind of gel this as we're coming to the end of today's live stream. But I've shared this before, but it's just so good. A client comes out of a meeting with his team and their client, and it was a disaster. The meeting was horrible. His team found out that there was all kinds of things that their client was not telling them. So they were not really able to serve them because they didn't have the correct information. And their client, that team was not communicating with each other. So it was like a real problem. They were not able to deliver their service because the team they're trying to help is not up to snuff. And it was such a disaster. And my client, what he said he did was he just said, "I'm angry," which in the world of digital technicians, that kind of communication was a big risk. And his team paused. He said they looked terrified. And then another person says, "Yeah, I'm upset too. There was no way we could have seen that coming with the information we had." And then somebody else chimed in. In the next 20 minutes, his whole team came up with a strategy of how they were going to pull the information out of the client, ways that they were going to help their client communicate in their own team. They were going to put in processes to ensure that they were getting the information that they needed. And so in that space, my client led with courage by saying what was so. It was an uncomfortable thing to say. I'm angry. I'm upset. But that demonstrated to his team. Now, also, he had been working with me for, 6 to 9 months at that point. So he was already bringing this stuff into his team. He was already talking about it. So he'd already set the stage, set the context for his team to be able to process when he just said, "I'm angry." And he had primed them so they knew what to do with that. He had been working on empowering his team. I don't know if I've shared that before. I probably should. Yeah. So it was not just a, one coaching session. Now I can communicate like a Zen master. It tends to not happen that way. Sometimes I'm kind of amazed. But so I hope that helps. And the other thing that I want to throw in here while I'm wrapping up, and please let me know if I'm on track with you or not, or if that was helpful. The other thing that I want to throw in here is that word balance. Balance is a wonderful thing. When I'm walking and running, it's like takes balance. Like we all need balance, but if I focus on being balanced, that becomes another to do and I am less effective. It's kind of like choke. Like if I'm like, okay, I'm in this game now and I need to be balanced while I'm playing and hitting the ball with this racket, and I need to make sure that I'm staying balanced. Well, you see, that takes you out of the moment. See, balance is created when I'm going for what I want. So this is actually a great thing to end on. Most of us don't really know what we want. I was 30 years old when I really felt that deep in my core, where I was like, oh my God, I'm 30 and I don't know what I want. Like, how did I get to being 30? I've done like all this cool stuff. My goodness, my 20s were woo! Like I've taken a lot of risks, but I don't really know myself or what I want. oh my goodness. And so I started paying attention to me in a new way and really refining my relationship with what I want. And I'm asking that question of myself now. What is it that I want? That's a wonderful question. What do I want? Oh my God. And as I'm asking myself that question and then going for more of the things that I want, then I'm creating the balance. Then I'm creating balance in my life. But if I'm just trying to be balanced because it's something I'm supposed to do to live a meaningful life, well, screw that. It doesn't do much for me. So, how do you balance showing vulnerability while still leading with confidence? Oh, I see your question in a new light now after saying that is to go for what you want. On your team, what is it that you're trying to achieve? What is it that you want and what is it that your team wants? What does success look like? And then it's so much easier to say the ways that you are concerned and to be more vulnerable and saying, like, I don't know how we're going to hit this goal that we have. We want to do it. I want to do it. It's really important to me. I need your help. And that creates the balance then. And confidence doesn't matter as much. Maybe saying things like, look, I know we've hit things in the past that we needed to hit. I believe that we can do this. That might be the way then that you communicate your confidence. I know you can do it. I don't know all the ins and outs. I can't micromanage it. I can't do it for you. But I know that as a team, if we come together on this, we can do it. We can be more than the sum of our parts. We can be, 1 + 1 = 3. We can go beyond what we currently know and what we currently are. We can transform. And I don't know exactly how we can do it. We're going to be checking in on these points, assessing our development. I believe that each one of you is creative and will come up with the solutions when needed. And that's what I need from you. So maybe that's helpful to hear it that way. So when you know what you want, when you have that vision and you can speak to that vision, that empowers your team. And allowing that you don't know everything, allowing that you need them. That's vulnerable, saying, I need you guys. I can't do this without you. All right. Well, great. I'm hoping that was on point for you. Coming up to the end of the hour here, I'm going to sign off in a couple minutes. Again, to recap, looking at fear versus intuition. How do high-stake leaders tell the difference? And ultimately, it's about going for what you want. So how do we tell the difference between fear and intuition? Well, I think that they actually are much more one and the same. As I am increasingly present with my fear, my intuition expands. I allow myself to have more access to my intuition. I allow myself to act on my intuition more. So intuition, it grows when I stop avoiding discomfort, when I lean into where I'm no longer confident, where I'm honest about it. That's where intuition begins to grow even more. And then building the muscle by choosing differently in the mundane, in day-to-day life, just choosing things differently. Physical therapist, it was like, just basic thing I want you to do is do things with the opposite hand. Notice how when you go to a door, You're used to opening it with the right hand. Well, start using your left. What's that like? How does your body have to interact with your environment? You know, when you stand up out of your chair, are you favoring a leg? Well, favor the other leg. It's stuff like that. Like, do things differently in minute ways. Say something just a little uncomfortable, and just notice how that feels in your body, and you will be expanding your intuition. So again, what I shared earlier is, from a neuroscience perspective, fear activates the amygdala to protect us. But if I stay present with the fear instead of avoiding it, I allow my amygdala to be accessed and I'm conscious of it, then my prefrontal cortex regains control, and I get better and better at taking meaningful risks. I become more alert, more aware. Another great way to do this is just meditation. Just sitting with nothing, no distractions, just allowing myself to be with nothingness. It's another great practice to help expand intuition. But I don't have to do that just in silence by myself. I can be noticing these kinds of things in relationship with other people. And there's a particular power to being aware of this stuff in relationship with people, because it's in relationship that we were wired. Our parents, our family, our community around us, that's how I came to be who I am. And so when I'm saying new things and taking interpersonal risks with others in the here and now today, I'm expanding my intuition. I'm expanding that. I'm learning new behaviors with other people, whether they know I am or not. I'm doing it. So take that with you. And great questions today. Thanks so much for asking those things. Really, really good stuff. I hope that was valuable for you. All right, everybody. George Miller here, signing off. I will be back next week. Take care, everybody.